Hi, I'm Alice, the Fabric Ninja, and I'm all about making sewing easy and fun for you. So when it comes to the Cricut and sewing, there are some people who choose to use the Cricut to cut out basic shapes for like quilts, triangles and squares, just the basic stuff. But there's a lot of people who find doing those shapes way easier by hand. So what are we going to use the Cricut for? Well, we're going to use it for what it does best. Intricate cuts that you would never want to try to do by hand. I mean, you could, but we have the Cricut, right? One of the great things about a Cricut and about making is that you get to choose the materials, you get to choose the colors, you get to really use your creativity. I'm a colorful person, so I don't want you to feel restricted by Cricut Felt and Cricut Suede. I want you to know that there's a lot more materials out there that you could use. And obviously a fabric store full of fabric. But today we're going to focus on materials that don't unravel, they don't fray. So when you cut woven fabric or quilter's cotton, slowly you'll get threads that come off of the end and it gets really rough and fuzzy. We're not using those today. We want any of the cuts that we make to stay stable, to have an edge that's not going to fall apart, kind of like leather. But we're not using leather today. You can totally use leather on your Cricut, but let's use some materials that are a little bit more approachable. A lot of people get scared with leather, so let's go with some things that are easy to use and are forgiving. I'm surrounded here with materials. So I'm going to go through them quickly so you can see all the different types that you could use, but I need you to keep one thing in mind. The material that goes on the outside has to be able to be cut by the fine point blade. The rotary blade on the maker overcuts just a little bit, and those little overcuts end up killing the pattern. So the rotary blade cuts out the hexagons real well, although it has a little extra cut at the edge of each. I can handle that. But you can see that these bees lost all of their detail on the inside. So unfortunately, the rotary blade is not a good match for this pattern, but the fine point blade is. So any material that you want on the outside has to react well to the fine point blade. And this may take a little trial and error. That's why I'm going to walk you through some options. And also know that the layer underneath doesn't have to cut well with the fine point blade. If you have a maker and it has the rotary blade, you can cut all sorts of things with that rotary blade, and it can cut the underlayer absolutely. There's no reason you need to use a fine point blade on the underlayer. You can even cut the underlayer out by hand. It's super simple. So let's walk through what I have on the table and what I used for these. This one is Cricut Felt for the outside. It was bonded to freezer paper before it was cut. And the inside yellow is really cheap polyester felt that does not cut with a fine point blade, but my rotary blade cut it super easily. So I was able to use a less expensive felt for the inside and a more expensive felt on the outside that was willing to be used for the fine point blade. This here, I kind of did the same things. Inside fabric is this beautiful shiny gold cork. It does not work with a fine point blade either, so I use it on the inside so I get this wonderful gold. And on the outside, I used Kraft-Tex. If you're not familiar with Kraft-Tex, it's a washable paper. It's a leather alternative that's not made out of polyester. So it cuts so beautifully, so crisply. It comes in hand-dyed packs, so all these different beautiful colors here. If you want to use the hand-dyed, you do need to moisten it slightly and iron it really flat before you cut. But it does cut beautifully on the Cricut. And then we have the standard colors, which are white, light brown, black, gray, neutral colors. And that's what I used for the outside of this, one of those neutral colors. Kraft-Tex is not available at Joann Fabrics or Michaels, but they do have some washable paper if that's something you're interested in. These are some washable papers that I found at Joann Fabrics. This is super shiny. It's not just the bag, it's a copper color. And this is kind of a gray. And I tried all of these materials out and they cut beautifully. Either a lightweight paper or a craft board for the thicker stuff is the settings that you use, but these all work so well. The only difficulty with these is they are so stiff, these thicker ones, and it is going to be hard to turn it inside out and hard to work with if you're a beginner because they don't move like fabric. The key to these is that once you have made your thing, you get to squish it. Squish it, throw it in the washing machine, get it wet, crumple it up, and it will slowly start to look like leather. You can really just abuse this and it will get all these wonderful leather crunches in it, and it looks so realistic once it gets worn. This completely flat version is just kind of hard to work with. But don't be afraid, throw it in the washing machine. It's washable paper after all. This is a faux leather. It's super shiny and it comes on a ribbon roll. I've also seen this look like mermaid scales before, and this cuts so well with the fine point blade. This is only 8 inches wide. This was found at probably Hobby Lobby, but I know I've seen this at other places too. This is another type of faux leather, but unlike this has a fair amount of stretch to it in one direction. And even on a strong grip mat, even bonded, it still does not cut well with the fine point blade. So I'm talking about all these new materials, and this could be like completely overwhelming, and I get it. I went through so much testing, but I did that so that you didn't have to. But when you're working with a new material, you should still do a test. So included in the zip file is a bee tester, and that is so that you can try out cutting the bee and the hexagon and make sure it works with the settings that you have. The bee and the hexagon are pretty small, so you're not going to really waste materials, and it's totally worth doing a quick test to make sure you're doing everything to make this successful. I did want to show you something real quick. This browse all materials, and if you go all the way down here, we have material settings. You can see every material, the cut pressure, how many times it cuts, and what blade. I actually have this in an Excel spreadsheet so I can search it, and if something's not working quite right, I can look here and say, oh, well, I need something that just has a little bit more cut pressure. So what is it? I don't really care what the words say. I want to know what the cut pressure is. So it's absolutely a great way that you can figure out how to really customize the Cricut for your use. So if you're in love with this bee design on the pouches, head over to my website and sign up for my newsletter, because I have more things that have these bees on them. And I'd love to share those other projects with you. It has a place where you can sign up to join my mailing list and get access to my entire freebie library. There are lots of other sewing patterns in there, access to all the other bee stuff, and you can find more information out about my class, which is called Zero to Sew. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Alice the Fabric Ninja, and I want to get you sewing. I hope you enjoyed this project.